Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to Power Over Tomorrow. I'm your host and resident financial advisor, Tyrone T.S. Mitchell, and we're coming to you all the way from the office of T.S. Mitchell Financial, LLC. Remember that T.S. Mitchell Financial, LLC is a registered investment advisory firm specializing in wealth management, tax planning, insurance, investment, and overall financial planning needs. And the information that we do share here on Power Over Tomorrow is for educational purposes and not meant for the solicitation or the endorsement of any particular stocks or securities. Stocks, securities, and many investments do have risk. So unless otherwise stated, are not guaranteed. So please continue to hit us up with your questions, your comments, and your concerns here on Power Over Tomorrow of T.S. Mitchell Financial on Facebook, T.S. Mitchell Power on Twitter, and also on our email is solutions@tsmitchell.com. Well, we talk about solutions, right? Our children have or will be going back to college soon, high school, and many other places. So there are things that we need to consider. You know, when it comes to our financials for our children, typically parents pay for college using their current income. They use 529 plans, what we call Coverdale or college educational IRAs, and other types of savings and investments. But some parents who haven't saved enough money, they dip into their retirement accounts to help pay for college. So our topic today is tapping into retirement for college tuition. Do I do or do I don't? We're going to investigate that today, and we're going to talk about these issues. But first, let us get a chance to watch this quick video on should you tap retirement savings to fund college. Check out the video. I'll be right back.
According to one study, most families say they would use their retirement savings to pay for their children's college education if necessary, and 30% are planning to do so. This raises the question, should you tap into retirement savings in order to fund your child's education? Here are 3 things to consider before you dip into that pool of money. 1. Retirement is a necessity, but a parent-funded college education is a luxury. Your security during retirement should be your first priority. 2. There are many ways to fund a higher education. Scholarships, grants, help from extended family, and the contribution of the student are all potential ways to supplement the expense of college. 3. Consider a less expensive college option. Fulfilling some requirements at a junior college or choosing a state-run school may lower the total expense. We may be able to help you shore up your resources for retirement and college costs, but it is important to start now. Call today and let's talk about it.
There you are, ladies and gentlemen. Should you tap retirement savings to fund college? Now, I know the video was quick, but sometimes we have to go into a little more in-depth study and to really be able to answer such a question. At the beginning, it said that 30% of the people are considering tapping into retirement accounts to fund college. Let me tell you, when you are dealing with taking money out of retirement plans, there are basically 2 ways to do so. One is through a loan, and one is through what we call withdrawals. Many of the withdrawals are basically the withdrawals on a retirement account, 401k plans, 403b plans. The only way you can take that out as a withdrawal is through a process called hardship withdrawal. So we're going to speak about that just a little bit, all right? But now let's talk a little bit about a loan. When you're dealing with loans, the good part about a loan is that you will still be able to contribute to the plan as well as take money out, but you won't be taxed on the money. So what happens is you're able to use the money, but you go into an agreement, and the agreement is to pay back over a period of time the money that you borrowed. Typically what happens is they really don't necessarily take the money out of your account, they move it into what we call a holding account. And then the institution will send a check. And then as you pay back that money or that loan, they slowly move money back into your investment portfolio or your active part of your retirement account. Not to cause too much confusion, but the key here is this. You have access. When you sign the agreement and you make the payments, that money goes back into your account, and as it goes back into your account, it moves back into the portfolio mix that you have for your account. Now, the downside is this, that there are companies that only allow maybe one loan that could be available at a time. Some may allow two, but you have to see what portion of the money would be available. If the money is not paid back, and as far as the loan is concerned, then it constitutes as a withdrawal. And when it goes down as a withdrawal, that means it becomes a taxable event. See, as a loan, it is not taxable as long as you are paying it back plus the interest. But when the loan goes into default, now what happens, that money becomes taxable. And for those who, who've been watching and being a part of Power Over Tomorrow, we often talk about the most expensive money you will ever use. That money comes from qualified accounts or retirement accounts that when you take money out, you get hit with taxes and penalties. First one, on any loans that default, the category changes from loan to withdrawal. As a withdrawal, the money that you don't pay back is taxable at your income level. If you're not 59 and a half, then the money is subjected to a 10% early withdrawal penalty. And on top of that, you may also have other restrictions as far as being able to put money into the plan in the future. So be very careful when you're talking about using your retirement savings to help fund for college tuition. Now, the other side is, let's talk about the hardship withdrawal. All right, so we said if you take out a loan, you pay it back, all right, that's fine. But if that loan should go into default, now it's a withdrawal. But the other withdrawal is called a hardship withdrawal, which means this: you get to the point, you have no money, nowhere to turn. Now, the IRS as well as the employer has an outline of what they call hardship qualifications. One would be if you need to take a withdrawal to keep a roof over your head, whether it's as a down payment on your primary residence or whether it's to prevent foreclosure on your primary residence. So that aspect, you're able to take a hardship withdrawal. The other part would be for medical expenses. So now your out-of-pocket medical expenses, they can amount to a certain level. And if you don't have any money to pay for those things, you may be eligible to take a hardship withdrawal to help pay for your medical expenses. The other part would be if you are using the money. Oh, the topic of why we're here, college tuition. That's the other one I'm thinking about. All right, so we said to keep a roof over your head, to pay for medical expenses, college tuition, and the last one, well, you may not be able to do it, but somebody else could, is for your funeral or for death and for final expenses. But let's talk about the college tuition side. On the college tuition side, you take the money out as a withdrawal. And I like what the video talked about, the three things we have to consider. Retirement is a necessity. A college education, and I know some may argue about this, is a luxury. Now, why do we say retirement is a necessity? Because at some point in time, your money is going to have to replace the physical activity that you had when you was working. So in other words, money has to come from somewhere. You have to save money for your future. We've often said before, a wise man plans for his household and his children and his children's children, so that the future is inevitable. Whether or not we will be there to see it all, but the portions that we have access to, we have to prepare for it. So planning for your retirement is essential. I was watching a study just the other day, and it talked about those who were born in 1946 through 1964. They're called the baby boomers. You know, some may like it or some may not. What that means is that right during that period of the soldiers coming home from World War II, there was babies being born like crazy. I guess the soldiers were happy they were coming home. They were home, and the wives were happy they were home. And they got together, and boom, you know, I guess that's what they call the big, almost said the Big Bang Theory, but that would not be nice to say. But either way, you know, we started seeing the infant rate explode. And in the study, it talked about what happened between 1946 to 1964 as babies were being born. Number one, get this, the baby food industry grew. Number two, the toy industry grew, all right? Number three, the automobile industry grew. You know, they were selling cars like crazy. And back then, you know, it was station wagons. And then the housing industry grew. The houses got bigger. And that whole segment of people, all right, that whole segment of people are the ones that are retiring now. Maybe that's why, just think about this. Maybe that's why places like Toys R Us, you know, are closing their doors, closing shop. Because the baby boomers who Toys R Us grew up with, all right, now that segment of population is at retirement age, you know, they don't need those toys anymore. And along with that, now the grandchildren of those individuals are maybe not necessarily playing with toys, but more toward technology. So we see a transition. Now, we're talking about retirement, tapping into the retirement to pay college tuition. Retirement is something you have to plan for. You have to set your money aside. You have to be able to make sure that you are going to have resources to fund your lifestyle. Now, when we say education is a luxury, and I know that to some may say, well, you need an education, you need a college education. Well, in some aspects, yes. But how you pay for the college education is what we're focusing on here today. You know, the argument of whether or not it's truly a necessity or a luxury, we can discuss that on another day. But the aspects of using your retirement accounts to pay for the tuition, you know, I say when you cross that, when you're trying to tread that water, tread lightly, because there can be some areas that will just have you underwater or drowning. Key factor: if you take the money out as a withdrawal, you got taxes, penalties, and yes, you can pay for the tuition, but you may be forced not to be able to participate in your retirement plan for a number of months. I've seen anywhere between 6 months up to 18 months. And what happens is when you take a hardship withdrawal, when you take that money out under a hardship withdrawal, provisions by your employer, not necessarily the IRS, but by your employer may say, well, you know what? We don't want folks using these retirement plans such as like a piggy bank, putting money in and taking it out at will. We have to have some forms of restrictions on there because the paperwork by the plan administrator, it's just a headache to be processing all these withdrawals all the time. So they put restrictions on them. Now, should you take money out, they can say, well, because you've taken money out and you have it listed as a hardship, that means you are things are too tight, things are too hard for you to continue to contribute into your retirement plan. So you're going to be restricted anywhere between 6 months or even up to 18 months, depending upon your employer. Now, someone did ask a question and said, well, why would people take a withdrawal and not just take a loan? Well, when we go back to that number that was in the video that said 30% of folks are planning to tap into their retirement plans, here's the factor. While 30% of the folks plan to tap into retirement plan based upon the survey, 22%, 22 out of 100 401k plans, retirement plans have loans on them. Almost a quarter of all retirement plans have loans. Now, when it comes to people of color, I gotta say this, when it comes to African Americans who invest into 401k plans, retirement plans, we already talked about the disparity between retirement accounts and how the accounts for people of color are typically 25% of or 10% of what other ethnicities have set aside. And then you take and you add on top of that, that while across the industry, 22% of the plans have loans against them. When you speak about African Americans, people of color, and their 401k plans, the number is nearly doubled when you talk about the number of people of color who have 401k plans with loans on them. The number is nearly doubled. So when we consider using our retirement plan to fund education, many times the only alternative that is left is to use the hardship withdrawal. And so now when we take that hardship withdrawal, what we end up doing is we get taxed on the money. All right, we don't have all the money that comes to us. So we take this hardship withdrawal and we said, what, if you're not 59 and a half, 10% early withdrawal penalty, the hardship withdrawal, the money that comes out will be subjected to 20% income tax withholdings, as well as income taxes when you file your tax returns. The most expensive money you will ever use. So now you're taking that money. If you had, let's say, $10,000 you was taking out, off the top, you're only going to get $8,000 because 20% income tax withholding comes before you even get the check. And then when you get the check, you are responsible for the entire $10,000, not the $8,000 that you received, but the $10,000 that came out of the account when it comes to taxes and early withdrawal penalties. So if that makes you want to wipe your brow and say, good goobly goop, and a few other choice words that you know I am not going to use, hey, that's what happens when you don't take the time to investigate. My father used to always tell me when it came time to do something, he would always say, look before you leap. Listen before you speak. Don't let your mouth write a check your behind can't cash. In other words, before you make that choice, weigh all the options. Now, you may say, well, I don't have any other option. Well, you do. You do. Sometimes we just have to say no. Sometimes we just have to say no to our children, or no to the aspect of mortgaging your future for a short-term need. You are going to spend more years in retirement than that child or even yourself is going to spend in college. if with the life expectancy, so you live your full life expectancy, retire at 65, 67, or 70, and your life expectancy says that you're going to live to maybe 75, 80, or even longer, depending upon longevity in your family, and you got this loan. You went to school for 4 years, 6 years, maybe even 8 years if you got a doctorate or JD, but that's just 8 years. But your future has been mortgaged. So where's the money going to come from? I understand the idea, okay, well, listen, I'll go out there and I'll make the money and pay it back, and okay, that's fine. That's fine. You know, if that's the case, then good, work that plan. But we have to understand the worst case scenario. And the reason why you want to understand the worst case scenario when it comes to financial decision making is because things do occur. They do. Folks lose their job, they lose family members, they lose focus, and they lose faith. When you lose some things, there's a price that needs to be paid. So using your retirement account to fund an education can be a costly factor when we're speaking about taking money out. Remember, retirement is something that you need to plan for. Education is something that you should plan for, all right? Because an education, listen, you don't have to go to college to be successful. You don't. I mean, when we think about the gentleman who started Snapchat, young guys, didn't even finish college, billionaires. When we think about Mark Zuckerberg and many of the other billionaires are out there in the internet business, many of them are developers, and what they developed was something that people wanted to buy. They wanted to be a part of. And that drove the market price, and many of them did not even finish college. So what do we say? A college degree, while it does prepare you, it is not the only way for you to get an education. So when you're looking at tapping into that retirement plan, just keep that in perspective. Your retirement is a need. The education is a luxury. Now, how do you plan to pay for that luxury? Hey, I'm glad you're here. I'm glad you asked that question. Number one, we talked, the program talked a little bit about scholarships. Well, remember, scholarships are not guaranteed. Scholarships come from the institutions or maybe other organizations, depending upon criteria that are met. Well, scholarships can go to one person or be spread out amongst a group of people or a number of people, but they're not guaranteed. Another thing that's not guaranteed are grants. Grants are not guaranteed. They are available as part of a humanitarian cause, but they're not guaranteed either, because many grants come from institutions that may have to undergo financial constraints. So if the money isn't there, the grants will be cut off. Another thing you can look at borrowing student loans, okay? You know, when you borrow money, you got to pay back the money plus interest. And then the program even said, the video even said, looking at family. Hey, come on. Do you really want to borrow from your family? I understand that we're here to help each other. But sometimes borrowing money from your family may not always be the best issue, may not always be the best situation. So what do? We must plan ahead. So if scholarships, grants, loans, and family members, if those factors are some of the things that you will not want to do, then what can be done? Well, there's one thing that can help minimize the cost of college education and help pay for that tuition. That way you don't have to tap into your retirement plan, is to encourage your child, all right, to look at a less expensive college. A less expensive college. You know, going to a school that has a high tuition does not necessarily guarantee that the child is going to have a job when they come out. And on the conversely, going to a less expensive school does not does not necessarily stigmatize someone to a low-paying job. No, because education is only as good if you apply it and use it. There are many folks that went to high-end school, and as Esther Rose said in the movie Driving Miss Daisy, when she was talking about Morgan Freeman, she says some folks don't have the sense God gave a living. Okay, you know, some folks don't have the sense God gave a living. So just because you may have gone to the most expensive and prestigious university, college, or educational institution does not guarantee you have the success that you need to make it. While it will afford maybe some additional opportunities, but opportunities only good if you can recognize them and use them properly. Now, well, what about going to a state school? There are many state schools that are tremendous as far as being able to move up with your education. All right, state schools are good. Now I know there are many folks that say, well, you know, they want their child to go out of state, or the child wants to go out of state. But listen here, you got to count the cost. You know, what man goes to war without counting the cost? In other words, if you're going to go to college, and unless you have a full ride or some type of scholarships that are coming in to help cover the cost, most of our children, and even for those of ourselves who go back to school, most of us have to pay that money out of pocket. So when we do that, let's look at the cost. Look at it. I don't want to tap into my retirement plan. You know, as a matter of fact, I didn't tap into my retirement plan to go back to college. And I don't plan to tap into that retirement plan to help fund my children to go to school. No, because at some point in time, my wife and I, we are going to want to sit back, relax. I don't drink a Mai Tai, but I'll sure drink a Virgin Shirley Temple. Oh, yes, I would. But what we want to do is just enjoy life. But how much can you enjoy life being straddled at 65, 70 years old with student loan debt that is not yours? Think about it. So when we look at our retirement plans, take into consideration the nature of the beast. Retirement plans is something that we must provide ourselves with. Education, all right, so we have to really decide how we're going to fund that education. Is it going to come through scholarships? Is it going to come through grants, student loans, family members? Where's the money going to come from? And if it comes from areas that are not guaranteed, you have to look at, what did we say? The worst case scenario, where everything comes out of your pocket. So if it comes out of your pocket, don't overlook the less expensive schools to get you started. There is a drive, and I did a research paper on this. Many folks of out in California, the more in affluent areas, what they are doing, their children are going to junior colleges, getting the first 2 years at a cheap rate, okay, and then transferring under bridge programs to the universities of their choice, all right, to the colleges of their choice. What did they just do? They just, on those first 2 years, in essence, has saved themselves anywhere between $15,000 to $20,000 or even $30,000 in tuition payments. Along with that, they allow themselves to maybe boost up their GPA so that when they do transfer to the 4-year schools or to the university or the college, they stand a chance to receive grants, scholarships. And if it's within the state that they live, typically if you live there for at least a year and you're now a state resident, you cut the price again. So don't overlook these things, because if we do overlook them, we will find ourselves tapping into areas such as our retirement plans when we don't need to. Remember, where you are today depended upon what you've done yesterday. Where you will be tomorrow depends upon what you do today. Before you tap into your retirement plan, remember 3 things to consider: your future, other options, and less expensive colleges or universities. Put those things into the mix before you decide to take money out of your retirement plan through loans or withdrawals. Because when that money is not there to be invested to appreciate in value, you are depreciating your future. We love our children. You know, we love the fact that higher education is available, but we must understand we cannot mortgage the future for short-term needs now. So what do you have to do? Well, the first thing you have to do is that you have to begin to make a true assessment of the cost. Don't be afraid to say no, but don't be afraid to say, yes, we need help. When you make a true assessment of how you're going to pay college tuitions, then you can better estimate the steps that you would have to take to make sure it gets done. It can be done. We've seen it before. We can do it again, but we have to make the proper steps in order to get the proper results. Remember, proper planning prevents poor performance. We don't want poor performance when it comes to our retirement planning. Why? Because, hey, sometimes you got to go back to the old adage that one mother can take care of 10 children, but 10 children can't take care of one mother. Now, it even gets more scarce when you talk about children taking care of daddy, okay? I'd say, look, I'm going to stick with my wife till Christ comes back. All right, I'm going to stay with her. Why? Because as long as I stay with her, I know my children will make sure mama's okay. And if mama's okay, then I stay with mama and I'll be okay too. Now, I'm not saying that's going to work for everybody, but that's just my plan and I'm sticking to it. All right, so, but here we go. Here we are. So the question, do you tap into your retirement plan to pay college tuition? Do I do or do I don't? Well, that's up to your discretion. But when you make that discretion, when you make that choice, make sure you understand the ins and outs of all aspects. Don't wait till the last minute. Begin your planning now. And to help you begin your planning, we have our website, tsmitchell.com, that has loaded with videos, with articles on how to plan for education, how to use your money wisely. We also welcome you to visit us on Facebook at Power Over Tomorrow and our business page, TS Mitchell Financial. We welcome you to visit us on Twitter, or hit us up on Twitter at TS Mitchell Power, and follow us on YouTube at TS Mitchell Financial. These vehicles are what we are using to ensure that you receive sound financial information so that you can make an educated decision concerning your family, your future, and your finances. By all means, remember, tsmitchellfinancial.com. Ladies and gentlemen, this has been Power Over Tomorrow, and my time with you, I truly hope and believe it's been well spent. The questions that come across and the topics that we do speak about often comes from the questions that you send to us through our website and also on our email at solutions@tsmitchell.com. So we want you to have those solutions. But most importantly, we want you to be able to know that the added resource is there. So continue to follow us here on Power Over Tomorrow, because your power begins today. And remember this, in your walk of life, may the road rise up to meet you. May the wind forever be at your back. May the sun shine upon you with his warmth, and may the rain fall upon you ever so gently. Until the next time when we can cross each other's path, may the God of heaven hold you in the hollow of his hands. I am Tyrone T.S. Mitchell. This has been Power Over Tomorrow. SRN Live TV, radio friends, and Facebook Live, and all those who are listening, be well, be blessed, and be your best.
Get at me for beats, yo.